Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Central Oregon Fly Tyers Guild. And Dick Rohrbaugh is going to be your instructor tonight. And Dick, I am going to make you the host so you can do screen shares and what have you. So I am going to go here and make you the host. All right. So let me see if I can pin you. Yep. There you go. Dick, take it away.
Okay. So hello again, everybody. Sherry's right. I'm beginning to try to get my fly boxes full for summer fishing. So I've been doing a lot of tying lately. What we're going to do tonight is talk about gilled nymphs. And can you all see that screen, the gilled nymph screen?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm sure most people are aware of the fact that all or almost all nymphs have gills along the sides of the abdomen. There's a few species that it's on top, but most are on the side. And many of them are very prominent. And it has therefore always puzzled me. There must be a zillion different nymph patterns out there, but very, very few of them actually bother to try to imitate the gills on a nymph. So I decided to see if we could do that this evening. I know a half dozen ways to do it. Some of them are annoyingly complex. We're going to try a couple of the simpler ones tonight. So I don't know if what we're going to do is revolutionary, but anyway, this is what we're trying to imitate. Whoops, let me go back one. Here doesn't want to stay. There. Here are 4 examples of the gill patterns on different nymphs. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, you can see the thorax is much larger than the abdomen, and there's a rather short section of gills that are on the side. On the one in the middle at the top, very long abdomen, gills on the front half of it. Down in the lower left, enormous gills on that. That's a flathead, often called flathead. It's a crawler nymph. And the gills are very, very prominent. Most of the patterns, the gills are smaller by the tail and they get larger as they go forward. But if you look in the upper right-hand corner, I don't actually know what bug that is. I just found that picture on the internet. But the larger gills are at the back of the insect. But in all of them, they're very prominent. So I decided, why not see if we can tie some nymph patterns where we actually imitate that characteristic of the nymphs. So this is the first one we're going to do. Here, let me show you a close-up of it. This actually, I tie for a PMD nymph. I tie several different types of PMD nymphs, but this one works quite well. And you can see the gills are very prominent on it, and they are on PMD nymphs. So that's the first one that we're going to actually take a shot at here. This is the recipe for it. I'm going to be using a Daiichi 1730, and I'm tying on as high as 14 hook. The PMDs on the river I fit, the Madison, are 14, so but I tie these much smaller than this if I'm going to fish the spring creeks over at Livingston, where the PMDs can be as small as size 20. Using brown UTC 70 thread, we're going to use copper wire. On this particular pattern, I'm going to be using cream marabou to imitate the gills. And then we'll come over the back of it with pheasant tail fibers. The marabou is going to be twisted, and I'll show you how to do that when we get there. The wing case on this critter, a lot of people use stuff like nymph's skin, or you can use pheasant tail fibers or whatever. I'm going to use scudback, and I'll show you why when we actually get to tying the fly. The thorax is ice dubbing. It's just a brown ice dubbing, and the legs are wood duck. So that's what we're going to try to pull off here. And so let me switch cameras, and I'll take this out of the vise and put the 1730 hook in. I got to get my glasses on. I can't see. If you look closely at this hook, it's got a kind of a bow in the middle of it. And I usually try to tie the abdomen on the back half and the thorax on the front, and that little crook in the hook provides a nice marking point for us. So we'll start with just putting our thread on the hook as you usually would. And the first thing we're going to need is a chunk of copper wire. You folks are all familiar with that phenomenon, so I'll just wrap it on, and I want to keep it on the side of the hook toward me if I can, and come all the way to the back. That next material we're going to use is the cream marabou. And so we need to talk a little about marabou. I don't know if I can get this on the camera. I need the camera farther away, so time out. I want to show you this. What we're looking for are the marabou fibers with the long, thin ends, but in the middle part of the feather here, down in here, we want it pretty fuzzy. And we're going to need that as we tie this in. And you'll see that when I actually do it on the fly. So let me go back and zoom up to the hook a little. So what I'm going to do is pull off some of these fibers. I need a bunch. When you're pulling them off the feather, you want to pull them straight out so that you get all the ends even. And then we're going to tie them in here at the back of the hook, fairly close to the tip. So let me grab those in the other hand. We'll tie them right here at the back. Then I'm going to clip that in, those tips off. And then I want to keep these kind of in place. Well, they just pulled out, so we get to do that again. Tie them in this way. I want to kind of keep these fibers together, so I'm going to capture them in my hackle pliers and just let them hang there for the moment. The next thing we need are some pheasant tail fibers that are going to create our back and tail, and you folks are familiar with this kind of stuff. So let me just tie this onto the back, and that'll make our tail. So now we have the copper on, we have the pheasant tail fibers that are I'm going to use for the back, and I'm going to pull the I want to get my hackle pliers on the marabou again. You'll see why in a minute. I want to be able to twist it. So I'm going to get my thread up here to the front, and I'm going to wrap a bunch of extra wraps so that as I wrap this on, that thread will unwrap. But I'm twisting this so that the fibers begin to splay out. So I'll get my twist going. And you can see that because of the characteristic of the marabou, as I'm moving forward, the size of the fibers is growing. So I get a tapered look on that. We'll tie that off. And then we can clip our marabou. And then I'm going to take a little brush. I'm going to kind of brush these out. I see I got one hanging down here. Then I'm going to begin to wrap the abdomen with the copper wire, and I want to start it by wrapping a couple of wraps right here at the back. So I'll get a kind of a little band of copper right here. Then I'm going to bring it forward, and you want to try to keep these pheasant fibers straight so they don't twist. And I'll start to work the wire up the abdomen. And that way we can cover the whole back of the fly. And wrap all that stuff off. So a little more brushing will help. So what I'm trying to do is get the, I see I got a couple of stray ones.
Can you refocus the camera a little bit? There we go.
Can you see that?
Yeah. You need to mute Jim Crislip because he's making some noise. I probably can't mute him. Hang on a sec.
Okay.
Okay, we're good.
Okay. This is the next thing we're going to put on is the wing case, and what I'm going to use is a little different. I'm going to use this. It'll be backwards to you, but it's scud back. It's 1/8 inch wide, and it's brown, and it's scud back. Part of the reason I like it is it's stretchy and it's shiny, and it makes a very nice back on a nymph. So we'll put that on. You want to try to be careful to keep that right on top. And that'll hang tight there until we get ready to bring it over. Now for the abdomen, I'm going to use, see if I can, this is just fine flash dubbing. Ice dubbing is what it really is. And it's in a kind of fiery brown.
Can you refocus the camera again?
Yes. Oops.
Needs to be up higher. There we go.
Is that in focus?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. So I'm just creating a dubbing noodle here of the ice dubbing. And you want to be sure you wrap that all the way back to where the gills are. So I'll need just a hair more. And you may remember from the pictures that the thorax of some of these critters is pretty chunky. So we'll get something like that. Go and trim a little of the excess out of the way. Then we got to put some legs on this critter. And I don't know how many of you are used to tying with wood duck, but if you haven't, you really owe yourself that pleasure. Wood duck is just an absolute delight to work with. This is a wood duck feather, and I'm going to use it for the for the wings or the legs. And you know, when you take the fibers off a feather like this, again, be sure you pull them straight out. That way you even up all the tips. Oh. Okay, pull them straight out from the side. Then you can pull them off. So I'll just tilt this up, give that a couple of wraps, and let me get the camera where you can see this. Then I'll just pull that till I get them the length I want them. Tie that one off with a harder wrap. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. So it's another batch of wood duck fibers. Try to get the things as even as you can. And turn this over. Put them on this side. Couple light wraps, and then I can pull them. See if you can see this. Pull them so that I get them the same length as the others. Now in a position I can wrap that off with solid wraps. And finally, we'll bring the wing case over. Now, as I said, I like this wing case material partly because it's stretchy a bit and partly because it's shiny. And because hatching nymphs, the wing case always shines. Pull this over. Tie it off. We'll wrap a bit of a head. And we'll finish. I'm going to do a little barbering here. So there you have it. So there you have it.
Boy, that looks buggy. Wow.
It's kind of fun to do. I was telling Sherry, I don't fish nymphs a great deal. PMDs would be an exception, but I have a lot of friends that are hardcore nymph types, so I tie a lot of these things for folks. But that way, you see, you get the gills to show up. And that's what I'm trying to imitate by using the marabou in that fashion.
So you fish it just like any other nymph?
Yes.
Okay.
For Al Beatty's thing in April, I'm going to do a program on PMD. I'm going to use a different PMD nymph for that one, and I'll do a cripple. One of the things that's true of PMD hatches is they cripple a great deal. And fish will key on the nymphs and the cripples much more readily than they do on the duns. So this is one nymph that I actually use quite a bit. So are there any questions about that one?
I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay.
You got
So-
21 people here tonight. That's really good.
So I'll tie a second one, and we're going to use a different way of creating gills. There are a lot of ways to do it, but these are two that I use a lot, so I just thought I'd share them. So this time, let me see if I can go to the recipe that we're going to use. So we're going to tie this one. I'm going to use olive this time, olive thread, same hook, Daiichi 1730. We'll use wood duck for the tail. We're going to use a clear vinyl rib for this one that will let the color of the thread on the thorax show through. We'll again use scud back and brown, and we'll do the front of it the same as we did the other one, but we're going to do the gills this time with ostrich herl, and in this case it'll be brown. So that's the critter we're going to try to do this time. Let me get to the right camera. Is that in focus?
It looks good.
Okay. So this time we're going to begin with wood duck. And as I said, if you don't tie with wood duck, do yourself a favor. It's just a delightful speckled material. The fibers tie on very, very nicely. And so this time we'll use those to make the tail. This kind of stuff's familiar to most people, so we'll go quickly. I'm sure you've all seen that a million times. Now let's talk about the vinyl rib that we're going to use. Now here's what it is. Again, that's backwards, unfortunately, but it's vinyl rib. And I'm using size medium. It's clear, and it's a medium size that I use on 14s. I use the small for smaller patterns than that, but we'll use the medium for this one. Now I want a good base of the olive thread on this because it's going to show through the clear vinyl. I want to talk a little bit about tying vinyl rib onto a hook. You all know that if we just tied it on like this, we'd end up with a big lump at the back. And there are lots and lots of different ways that people have come up with to try to figure out how to avoid getting a big lump at the back. One way that's becoming, you see it on the web a lot, that's becoming more common is actually to burn the end of this. And I'll show you what they do and why I don't do it. You can see that I pulled a little flat spot onto the end of that. Does that show up?
Yeah.
It's kind of flat, but it's rather small. And there's an easier and better way. You're all familiar with cutting making an angled cut in the I can get my hands in the right place, making an angled cut in it. And that is one way to do it. But I discovered that there's a way we can improve on that. So let me cut that little burn tag off and I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm taking some flat bladed pliers, and I'm going to start working on the end of this piece of vinyl. And you'll notice that I can flatten it out. You see that?
Yeah.
I'm going to flatten a section of this. Get it nice and flat and thin. Now, if I turn that sideways, you can maybe you can see I can't get it there.
There it
You
is.
can see that it's getting thinner. But I'm going to keep working on it just a hair. I can get it thinner than that. Let's see if now you see it's getting thin. Now, if I use that and do my angled cut, which I'll do right here quick. Now I've got not only an angled cut, but it's flattened. And even after I cut it, I can flatten it again. So this is not going to make any lump at the back of this fly when I tie this on. It's now a very fine point, and it's very flat. I don't know if you can see that very well. At any rate, that's going on here. I'll tie it on. And now I need something that I'm going to use for making the gills. There are lots of things that you could use with this method to do it. But I'm gonna use a chunk of ostrich herl. This has been dyed brown. And I want you to look very closely at the ostrich herl. I don't know if you can see that the fibers from the rachis, the fibers are pointing up. Or if I turn it over, you can see that they're pointing down. Is that clear on the screen? Now they're all pointing down.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, well, what you want in this case is you want the fibers pointing toward the back of the hook when you tie it on. And it's hard to show this. But I want to tie it on so that as I begin to wrap it, those fibers will lean toward the back. And again, I'm going to build up the green underbody on this a little bit. We'll come up here to the bend in our hook, and we'll begin to tie our abdomen. And if I don't know if you can see it very clearly, but because I flattened that, took as much trouble to flatten that thing when
There's
I
no
started,
lump back there.
There is no lump. It's just gone. I want to get this wrapped down good and tight here at the front. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this thing down so that the fibers are pointed toward the back, and I'm just going to spiral this up. Whoops. I don't know if you all noticed, but that turned around.
It did. It's okay.
Yeah, there we go. One leaning back. No, they're not leaning back. We're going to live with it. They're all leaning forward. But we've got gills.
We do.
And this method makes very prominent looking gills. Now, the next thing we want to do, we don't want the gills on top. And we could just scissor them off, but there's another way you can do this. I'm going to take a lighter. When you do this, be sure you get your thread out of the way and turn this to the side because the flame will burn your thread in half if you're not careful. But just a quick pass and all of the fibers are gone off the top of the. Just a quick burn. I can trim them even a little more, but I want them on the sides. I don't want them on top. So the next thing, the rest of this is pretty much like the other one, is we got to get our scud back on here. And then we're looking for dubbing again. And again, I'm using the same brown ice dub. And I'm going to do a little barbering. Now we have to go back to our wood duck. Because we're going to put legs on this thing. This material is so easy to work with, and it makes such nice legs. There you can see how you have to pull it straight out from the rachis. Again, so you get the ends all the same, lined up the same length. Turn it up on its side and put the first batch on, a couple loose wraps. And then I'll just pull that to make them as short as I want them and get them in position. Tie that side off. And then we'll just repeat that process on the other side. Couple loose wraps again. Well, I'm just pulling that so I get it the same length as. That's a little too short. Trim the excess, I gotta bring the scud back over the top. I tie this pattern actually very small. I tie it for beta nymphs. And in that case, I have to use the finer vinyl rib. But, and instead of the brown, I use peacock for the gills. And you can make a very, very nice beta nymph that way. So if I turn this on the side, you will see that it has a fine looking set of gills.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd encourage everybody, try to put some gills on your nymphs the next time you tie. Can I make the claim that gills will catch you more fish? I don't know, but I like to try to imitate what's actually out there. And this kind of a pattern does that very nicely. So any questions about that one?
I don't have any questions. It's just really a good pattern. Let me move the pin. So can you put that back on yourself?
Yeah. Whoops. For some
I think
reason, my camera isn't working.
well, it froze on you.
Yeah, it did, but that's
It
not
did.
what I had in mind.
It's all right. We can still hear you. So does anybody have any questions about this or basically input on what you might want to encourage Dick Rohrbaugh to share with us in the future? Because he's got so much in his arsenal. It's hard. It's hard to decide what it is that we want to know and what we want to hear. And I'm hoping that he'll time more than one class next.
There, I got it.
Well, you did 2 classes this year, and we get some more. Tell him about the list of tips that you started years ago.
Years ago, I used to write a column for the monthly newsletter of the Trout Unlimited. And my column every month was tying tips. And I've collected the articles that I wrote. I've got about 60 of them of a wide variety of tying tips. And Sherry and I were talking earlier that maybe next year I can share a lot of those because they have to do with technique, they have to do with materials, and they have to do with equipment. And so patterns, I'll be in the tip business. Somehow my camera keeps freezing up.
Yeah, but we can hear you and we can still see your face. Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
Well, we ended up with 22 people here tonight, and this was really, really great. A little different than anything we've had before that talks about that particular thing. Next, it'd be on April 6th is Dutch Bachman is going to do woven flies for us. So you guys make sure that you yeah, let me get a view here and we'll do a gallery view. Make sure that you join us to see the woven fly thing, and that's a technique in itself. And of course, Alan Gretchen have a great book on weaving. So we're going to do some weaving flies next week. You got a heads up. Yeah, that book is just a marvelous, detailed. If you're interested in that, take a look at that book. And so next week will be those woven flies. And then after that, we were supposed to have Jack Gillis on April 13th, and he is not going to be able to teach. He's got something else that came up, so he can't be here. So I'm going to ask Jeff Perrin if he can teach the class that he missed because he had an accident with his dog. It's very personal. We're such a personal group. So I'm going to see if Jeff can teach that one. And then the only other class we have scheduled is April 20th. Tips and tricks we learned this year. That's probably not a good subject because we're basically going to jump into that in the next series. So I'm going to think of something, or I reach out to our instructors to see if someone wants to cover that last class. And
Can I just make a comment to Al?
Sure.
Al, I got that camera you recommended.
Oh, good.
And it's just so much clearer, and you can control how close it is to the fly very nicely. It's very excellent. So thank you.
Very good. I'm glad to hear that. Yes.
So
Hey,
Al,
Dick, this is Jerry Chris. How do you fish that nymph that you just showed us, the last one? The length of your leaders, or how do you control the depth of that?
I don't actually do a lot of control with it. I just dead drifted about a foot under the surface. During a PMD hatch, the fish will hang about a foot to 6 inches under the surface. And they just sort of hang and wait for the dinner to come down the conveyor belt. And all you got to do is float it by them. You don't have no special fancy technique. I do it on a floating line. I usually fish rather long leaders. Even in the river, I've got a 12-foot leader and it's 6X. But I just, let it float a foot underneath and just dead drift down the stream. It's all it takes.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? If you guys have ideas for us I'm already jumping into planning the next series. So I'll have a date list for people to start, our instructors starting to choose. So if you also know an instructor that would be good for our group, certainly give me a tip and I'll talk to him. So we're gonna get going, and I really think we are, like I said before, we're gonna continue to do this until till my time runs out. So Al, do you have any input on how it went in East Idaho?
I wasn't there, so I can't really report on anything other than what I've received in emails from people. And I understand that it was a great show and
Made big bucks.
they made some really good bucks. And there was some challenging travel for people coming and going.
Mhm. Was anybody else here tonight that went to East Idaho show? Okay, well, we'll get reports. I just looked at a lot of the facility that they've got. The new facility is so fabulous looking. I go, wow, it's the wow factor, because there was a lot of room. There was a lot of ways, and the way they organized their vendor booths and all the tires in the middle, it basically gave the tires front and center. And I understand that their live auction from Will Godfrey, which I talked to him, and Will said their live auction was fabulous. So they raised a lot of money for the club and the community. It's a community supported event. So the community, whether fly fishing or not, they come to this banquet and live auction. And so they did really well this year. So changing a venue sometimes is pretty scary for the organizers. I imagine it would be, but it turns out that it looked pretty good. But again, they had the same challenge we had for the expo this year. Is some people couldn't get over the pass and or couldn't get to Idaho because they had 60-mile-an-hour winds at their event, and we had really tough time for people getting over our pass. So the show season is the show season. We can't do anything about that because that's when the vendors can do their thing because they're busy all summer. So if you guys have any other suggestions, we can say goodnight tonight. And thank you for being here. There was 22 of you. So we'll keep the cards and letters coming and keep the instructors in tow.
Thank you, guys. It was a good tie. Thank
It was a
you.
great presentation, Dick. I loved it. It was really good.
Well, it's short and sweet. It's not revolutionary, but they're fun to do. And
They are fun.
Yeah.
And thank you for doing that. It's great.
okay, good night.
We'll see you next
Good night.
week. All right. Bye.
Thank you. Good
Bye,
night.
Kathy. Good night.
Bye.